Hey, what's going on, people? You're watching that awesome podcast on TLDTV. We're back again. Today, we're going to be discussing a controversial issue out there in the world. So, Noel Clarke has had a number of allegations raised against him over the past week. These come before, during, and after his BAFTA award, and we're now up to 20 women who have alleged some form of misconduct or sexual abuse. This issue seems to keep happening. Kane, how did you first come to hear about this story, and what were your initial thoughts?
Yo, Instagram, man. Instagram, the modern day, news for me. So I was scrolling through my Instagram and seen it. And I was like, why does this ring a faint bell? And then it took me on to remembering that Adam Deacon stepping forward and trying to say some things. And at first I was like, right, okay, is this just something small? Like maybe a few people don't dislike him, or is there a weight to this? And then more and more came out, and then I was like, oh man. Someone who I thought was doing some good things, seems like there's a lot of bad things that was going on as well. A lot of bad things. So yeah, I was shocked, and then I was sad, and then I was angry. That was how I felt.
Yeah. If we fast track backwards about 2 weeks, so before these allegations came out, what were our prior thoughts of the character of the man who is Noel Clarke?
Mixed.
Yeah?
Mixed. I mean, in my head, when I first knew him from Doctor Who, if I'm going to be honest, it was Mickey. Was he Mickey? Mickey. Billy Piper, wasn't he? But after that, I saw Kidulthood, Adulthood, and some of the stuff he did. And it just felt like he was a bit of a jack of all trades, but a king of nothing, you know? Like, he did really good stuff, but nothing really stood out to me. It's kind of how I saw him. He's like the British guy that can do lots of things kind of well, but not well enough to get the big budget film next time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of how he felt to me.
It's brutal.
Like, always very talented, because he's always a writer, producer, director, everything. But yeah.
Do you know what? This is the difference here. Did anybody see Kidulthood in real time when it first came out? Yeah.
That was monumental.
You know, I think for me, it was like a production superhero type. I'm not gonna take it all the way there and say like a Spike Lee, but it was almost like the potential and the ceiling felt similar at that age. Because there's the other thing. I was shocked to hear that he's 45 now. I didn't know he was those kind of numbers. So me doing the maths. Huh?
Because he looks young.
Yeah, at least younger than 45. Because I always thought
30s at least, right?
Yeah.
The main thing is that it makes us feel old, because you remember watching it when you were younger and you're like, oh my God, he's 45. And that was 15 years ago or something, or 20 years ago, however long ago it was.
Yeah. I mean, so for people who know that trilogy, because I even thought that Sam character seemed like such a great character and villain. Turns out he was just playing himself.
Oh yeah.
Oh dear. I mean, I guess particularly as well, as people of color, seeing someone able to bring out a series like that, Kidulthood, Adulthood, and just have longevity in the film industry. I don't think I know enough about him to have an opinion either way, but I remember thinking okay, cool, we're doing things here. Yeah.
And I guess him, and maybe if I was going to try and go backwards in my head, the way that I maybe see Ashley Walters now is the way I saw him a few weeks ago. Even the fact that he was able to secure certain funding, I remember when I first went to see the films, even the fact that it was in was it Brotherhood I first saw in cinema, But you know how it was. Like, I'm sure for you guys, when you first saw Kidulthood, it wasn't in the cinema. It was on like a laptop or, or something somewhere. And yeah, the fact they got there. So I was like looking at the start credits to see how did he manage to pull this off? Okay, it's like lottery funded. So his network was clearly strong. This might be a good point to say the word allegedly 10 times as well.
Oh yeah,
because it's not clear. There's no, how would you phrase it? So concrete evidence in the terms of like video footage or anything like that. But there is supposed eyewitness testimony from 20 separate women. How do we feel about that as a evidence stack? I'm not sure what the number is for how many people in my head make someone officially guilty. But Emma, what do you think of the number 20? What does that say to you?
Well, I'm a massive believer in there's no smoke without fire. I think like nobody wants to hear these things about somebody that they've admired over the years. Like you don't want to believe those things, but I think it's fair to say with the amount of, I was reading through them individually earlier, and okay, just because there's no evidence doesn't mean it didn't happen. And that's what really frustrates me and makes me feel frustrated for these women, because not only are they having to potentially like relive these situations that they're accusing him of, but they're also being told by his lawyers, well, you don't have any evidence and you were being flirtatious and all of these things. So that's the frustrating part for me. I think there's a lot of positive feedback about him as well, as women who've worked with him over the years who've never had a problem. But just because there might be an imbalance of positive versus negative doesn't mean that it takes anything away from the negative accusations. Every experience that an individual has with another individual is equally as important, and especially when it comes to somebody who's quite high profile and is potentially abusing their power. So yeah, as I said, no smoke without fire. And I think I wouldn't want to discredit anyone who's been brave enough to step forward by saying there's no proof, so your experience didn't happen, basically.
Yeah. Do we all generally feel as though in this kind of situation, you believe the victims until proven otherwise? Is that a general feeling?
Nah. You know what? It's really hard to speak on this without coming across like insensitive. But I think it really depends on the situation. And I'm never the victim's lying. I won't go as far as that. But I'd be either neutral or I would be like, oh, I'm on the victim side. That's normally a swing in between there. For me, for it to be neutral, and I'll be like, I'm not sure, so I'm not going to say anything, is if it seems like ambiguous, and there's a few things that point in the direction of, wait a minute, it might not add up, or it's convenient, or things like that. That for me would leave me in a neutral side. Whereas if normally I look at some situations and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I think that this probably happened. This did. That's how I swing personally.
Yeah.
Is that because all you see on the media is ex-stars being hauled in for paedophilia, or is that because you genuinely think that person's done it though? Because I get the feeling from just years of watching the news that we're inclined to believe that these people have done the bad thing, not because they have, but because it feels good to tear someone down who's got power. Someone, I can't help but feel that there's always that element. Don't get me wrong, some of them convicted arseholes, put them away. If they've done awful things, sure. But until you're convicted, you're not guilty. I'm sorry, I don't care how many women line up. Because you know what, at the end of the day, something might happen and it might turn out that he was right all along. We don't know. And what annoys me with these stories is, okay, sure, if men are doing awful things and they're abusing their power, they should be held accountable. But what about the women that lie? Not saying that these women in this stories are lying, but there are plenty of examples of these celebrities who once have been drawn through the mud, and then the trial happens and people have lost interest. It turns out that they weren't what they said they were, but yet they've lost millions in legal fees. They're never going to get work again, etc., etc. Where are the repercussions the other way? I
totally hear that. I think it is better to be fair-minded, to be neutral, to not vilify someone if their name's been kind of attached to things like this. But on the flip side, the majority of those cases where it has turned out to be purely conjecture and people lying and making up allegations that aren't true, you know, those cases are few and far between. And knowing people who are in the industry even more heavily than myself, who've actually come across individuals and actually had experiences of their own, even with Noel Clarke, and I'm not really at liberty to discuss everything, but it's like those women, they don't just start talking about these stories off the bat. It's only when, oh my goodness, lots of other people have come together and, you know, they've talked about their experience, then they actually feel able, like, okay, well, someone will actually listen to me now. Because most times, you know, these people in power are able to use that power and, you know, create a dynamic where women feel that either they want the role or they're not allowed to speak out, or there's just some sort of injustice that because of their position, they just have no leverage and they just kind of have to suck it up. And it happens so much in this industry. It's like, if it wasn't so sad, it would be like laughable, because it's just so often all these microaggressions, you know, people thinking that they can talk to you in certain ways, touch you in certain places.
What do you mean by a microaggression?
I mean, it could be something like, oh, smile, love, or you're on set, or slapping your bum as you go past, or making an inappropriate joke, or just something that anywhere else, you know, it's not comfortable.
So,
here it's the done.
Sorry, so microaggression is
it's something that for people,
something
like,
that could have been deemed acceptable in another time that isn't basically. Like what you were saying about, oh, you're right, love, cheer up, it's not that bad, things like that. I mean, that might seem like an old funny gesture, like a guy might make.
It's just I don't associate those sort of things with the phrase microaggression. So I just want to be clear with what you're trying to say.
Yeah, sure. I mean, perhaps that's not the best umbrella term, but I suppose that's just the word that comes to mind. Microaggressions, abuses, sexual assault, maybe they might all be lumped in together, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. It's almost like the unquantifiable things that you can't, if you repeat it to someone out of context, it's not going to sound like, what do you mean, what's the problem, type thing. But in that moment, you're fully aware of the position that you're being put in. It's, you know, I think we'll kind of know the kind of comments, you know, the short skirt comments, or the, you know, just the little things that kind of can make you feel in a position of uncomfortability. I guess, yeah, but between what you guys have said in terms of the not judging too quickly, or kind of giving them a stamp and some handcuffs of guilt, the technical thing with situations like this, I think, is the position of power, where what do you do when he's on BBC film committees, he's on a ITV mentorship program, which, you know, mentor equals young actors, and, you know, the pipeline of females coming to him by virtue of the position that he's in. How do we reconcile that without not framing him as guilty, but without treating him as somebody who is in a position where he's compromised?
Well, it is innocent until proven guilty, but at the end of the day, like, the companies that he's associated with have a duty of care for all of the people that they're working with. They have a duty of care towards him to not make him like out to be immediately guilty. You know, they have a contract with him. They have to support him in other ways that they can, whether it's help or anything like that. But they have a duty of care to anybody that's associated with their company and therefore with him. And if there was if you bought a pair of hair straighteners that said, oh, careful, these hair straighteners could possibly blow up when you use them, or they could set fire when you use them, you're going to go, there's a possibility, they might not, but they might. You're not going to buy them, or you're not going to give them to your sister or your mother and put them at risk. It's a funny analogy, but hopefully you get my gist of what I'm saying there. Until the matter is settled, you still have a responsibility to everyone. So it's right, I think.
Take it away from him, take the role away. Temporarily.
Because it's not permanently, it's until further notice. And that's what would happen if you were at work and you were suspended from work. It'd be until an outcome. We arrive at an outcome.
Problem is with acting, things are time sensitive. So if it's held off until they know whether or not, you don't say his trial's in 9 months. End of filming could have been 9 months away. So they're going to drop him for someone else. That's the problem with not saying that like we should let him keep his jobs, whatever. I'm just saying that's the problem with acting work. It's like it is time sensitive. So like if he's signed on to do a big film, and they go, oh, we'll hold off the role until this is all sorted. If they start filming in 3 months' time and your trial hasn't happened, what happens then? It's going to be given to someone else. Tom Cruise is going to come in and he's going to sweep it up and he's off.
I don't think Tom Cruise would be recruited as a replacement.
Instead of
I'm rooting for Kane. Like, Kane, I feel like that could
be. Going off what LJ said there, like, I understand what you're saying, and I think we're speaking on a lot of it's really unfortunate for a person to lose out on these things if they were proven innocent. But like at the same time, in a realistic world, like as like Emma was saying, we can't continue once these allegations come out. Unfortunately, whether or not you've done it, things will have to come into place. And if he loses out on these things, if he loses out on roles, that's unfortunately the business that we are in and he is in. If he didn't work in this industry and it was like an office setting where they weren't time sensitive, then he wouldn't. That just comes down to acting. I think there's loads of different things that with acting, it's really unfortunate. It's very delicate and easily can be thrown out of line, whether or not you get into a car crash and then, or your mother's in hospital. There's loads of things that could happen where you could lose out on something because of the nature of that business. And this is it's just an element of that. I don't think it's down to him not doing it and then he losing because of that. I think it's down to the nature of the business of why
you are found innocent. For instance, say he's found innocent at the end of the day. From what I've read, probably not. But say he is.
Yeah.
He's innocent. Should he then, at the end of the day, then have legal repercussions in order to claim back his lost earnings from the people that falsely accused him?
No.
Why? Because they lied and they ruined his life. Shouldn't they go through the same sort of hell as him?
Because, and I understand what you're saying as well, because I've had a similar discussion. Because if he has lost out and it's because of what they put him through, fine, there should be some kind of repercussions on those people lying. However, as I said earlier, him losing out on the job is not purely because of these people. I think it comes down to the time sensitiveness of the acting world. So if he was not in this particular field, his earnings would not have been so fragile that it could be so knocked off by a few months off.
Yeah.
That's it. I think as well, something that's really important to discuss is like what you said earlier, you said about how like why when someone who's in a certain place things come out about them, I do agree that people are like, yeah, you know what, I've always disliked him anyway, and people down here like to get at people up there, but at the same time, I know personally, I never look at anybody else up here and think, I want to hate on them for being up there. I think there's personal people who do that, and I do think that's a true obligation, true observation, that people do go, I hate this person because they're doing better than me, and I'm so happy we've got dirt on them. But I also think as well, there's genuine people out there who will just be like shocked to hear it and would sit there like neutral until proven otherwise. So I think it's you have to be careful with how many people are like that, how many people are like that. I think there's a lot of people sit in between all those different places. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting factor that you raise with the potential innocence. I think ultimately what it boils down to is, like we saw with Johnny Depp style, you can get like a kind of countersuit where I think it's just important to establish the difference between we didn't have enough evidence to convict and perjury, contempt of court, and that kind of thing. Just because they're two different, if I say someone slapped me or whatever else, it's just like hoping for the best going to court after that, if you don't have actual evidence. And I think this is often the case where if we were to say too freely, if they're found innocent, y'all are paying for this, then I think the amount of women coming forward, and even this seems quite tentative. If he doesn't get a BAFTA, I'm not sure if this story ever even comes out. Like, is the nature of it. I think it's just he as a person rose to such prominence where, and I guess this is the counterbalance to what you're saying about kind of being at the top of that tree, because of how big and inflated he became. Is the shadow that he's casting now becomes so much greater. If he was just a guy from West Norwood or something like that, you're not going to have a tabloid story or anything like that. But when he's starting to be so influential, I mean, one of the girls just asked for her to go to a drama school, and she just got in. And that's the power level that we're talking about. Now, for the next girl who wants to go to drama school, you now have a choice to make, because it's not been run in a fair manner, which I want to ask you guys about, because you guys have acting experience. Am I the only one who feels like the whole acting world is just crazy?
Yo, 100%.
It is. It's a game. It's a beast. You have to be prepared to ride it, and that's why I'm not involved in it in any deep way, because you have to be made of tough stuff. Like, it's not a fair place. Like, yes, people will get roles based on talent, but also it's based on who you know. It's based on which circles you move in. It's based on a lot more than just what meets the eye. And if you can crack that algorithm and do well, like, more power to you. But there's a lot of people who are very talented, who have paid their dues, but still aren't reaping, the benefits from it. So that's something that everybody would have to weigh up with sober judgment before entering into any sort of performing career, where it's very fickle. You could be the it girl one day, and then, everybody's forgotten about you tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it from the perspective of, like, I just feel like in most jobs, generally speaking, you're kind of, whatever weirdness you have going on in your head, at home, whatever else, you're encouraged to kind of just leave that to the side and just be the best, most normal version of yourself you can be to function in society. Whereas in acting, it just feels like the opposite to me, where you're encouraged to be like wild and crazy and free, and somewhere in between, like the naked auditions and the partying and the going back to the producer's house, and like the whole thing just seems wild.
It isn't always like that. I say for certainty that it isn't always like that. It's not always parties and things, but you touched on the party and the naked audition thing, and that was the thing when I was reading, because it's mostly from the Guardian article. These 20 women were all those stories were corroborated by the Guardian, so that it all funnels through the Guardian article, and everyone else is held on. But what sold it to me is when you read through the Guardian article and the way they speak is it's not just, oh, he touched me, it's the situations they were put in. Multiple women independently are saying very similar stories. Like, they were invited in and then pressured into a nude audition that they were told wasn't going to be filmed, and their agent had been contacted by him and he told them it's all going to be fine. So they've got him and the agent telling them to go, and just the details matched up too much. You talk about that acting world, and like every single one of those things for me is like a red flag as an actor. It's like, hang on, I said I'm uncomfortable and you're pressuring me into this? No. Like, if you've got a good production, that should never happen. But it was interesting seeing the same red flags for every girl, or a few girls at least.
Yeah. And that thing of what you said, LJ, about I feel uncomfortable, I think there's just so little being done to really promote the idea that at any point in time, you're allowed to say, no, this does not work for me. Like, I don't care how much you want this role, how much this means to you. Like, there has to be a point where you have to go with that gut feeling. You know, something similar happened, well, not similar, but something happened where I had to essentially say, no, I'm not going to do this. This is against my principles. And yes, if that means I lose money, it means I lose money. And, you know, no agent, no people who are supposed to be looking out for the welfare of actors, male and female, should be, you know, agreeing to these sorts of things. There are industry norms, as much as, you know, Gina, you're saying it's wild. There are industry norms. Going for an audition naked just doesn't sound right. Like, something should be twigging in your mind, like alarm bells should be ringing.
Yeah, I mean, my worry is just that I just feel like it's going to be someone else's name in either a few months or a year or so. Yeah, and I guess I take the point that it's not a norm, but it also, unless I'm just off, there seems a level of acceptance there that you don't really find in other industries. Even I'd say like music, when I've been in certain acting scenes, that uncomfortable feeling that you kind of speak about, I feel like I've seen it being like actively coached out of people. When I've like been in college and such, even, it's almost like so much of the process is dedicated to making you feel as comfortable as possible in the most uncomfortable situations, and all while being filmed, which I guess is the weird part for me. So what's the solution?
Just want to touch on what you said there. I think what's important to think about is, as an actor, you're doing a performance, and it's the actual nature of what it is very difficult. You are everything you are. Technically, you are no longer, and you are trying to convince an audience that you are now something else. And we all know how damaging nerves can be. So it's good to say, look, you be relaxed, be comfortable. That is good. It's good to teach people to be like that. However, unfortunately, people can twist that and say, be comfortable doing this, be comfortable doing this, be comfortable doing this. You should be comfortable doing anything. And that, as ZaZa said, that's when it's like, no, everybody's different. And yeah, I understand I should be comfortable doing a performance, but that completely depends on what that performance is and subject how I feel about it. The solution, I feel like I think people need to learn their power as an actor. Like, that's what I think it should be anyway, where you should have a voice and you can say, look, I don't want to do that. At the same time, on the receiving end, people shouldn't be asking people to just do anything. I think the acting industry is very fickle. It's very, like, it's just things that you can say to people that you could never say, like, oh, we need a fat one for this scene. Or, oh yeah, like, I've seen it. You know what I mean? I've seen castings where it said, we need big women, we need this kind of person, we need that kind of person. And as much as I understand that there's a certain scene and that's needed, I think there's a responsibility of how to communicate that to people and just be able to communicate what you say to a director, a producer and stuff like that. So both people can get what they want, but nobody's harmed in that. Something like that, I imagine.
Fairs, any other thoughts? How do we solve this? Come on, people, don't give up.
We should bolster the strength of the individual, you know. I think a lot of the time, the reason why these subjects get talked about a lot, I think, is because there is a lot of like, well, if I was in a situation, I would have X, Y, and Z did this, or I would have done this. And it's like, yes, we're all different. So I think kind of the approach is, my approach would be to help individuals, not to think of a certain population of people susceptible to being assaulted. I think that's patronizing. How dare you? You know, everyone should be taught how to look after themselves. Obviously, you know, the world is full of evils and we can't kind of know what's going to be coming around that corner. But if we encourage everyone and encourage those we love and people around us to be the best that we can when we encounter these situations, I think we handle them better, regardless of, say, he's my boss. If you know, deep down and you are supported by your family, you're told if you feel it's right, you need to say it, you're much more inclined to turn around and go, what the hell are you doing? You don't touch me. I am your employee. And from my experience, when people approach things with confidence, not necessarily confidence, but with an attitude of, no, I am who I am, don't touch me, it tends to shoot fear into whoever's opposite them, regardless of how powerful they are, because they know what they've done wrong at the end of the day. They know they're being awful.
Yeah. And I think create just a culture of openness around this subject. You know, it shouldn't be every couple of years, someone's name's in the paper, so-and-so's had this, like, not just one or two, but like string of allegations, obviously with the Harvey Weinstein, Noel Clarke, and like you said, Junior, it's going to be another few people in the next 10 years. And it shouldn't be that. Like you said, LJ, empowering at the individual level, and also, like, I think reform for the industry. I think just getting rid of that whatever it takes kind of attitude, and really looking to protect the artists, the individuals.
Yeah, I agree. I think it comes from the inside as well. Like, I know this sounds like a really cynical thing to say, but where there's one rat, there's 10 rats, right? And like, people move in these circles together, and everybody knows who else is up to the same behaviour as what they are. I guarantee you, Noel Clarke, if he should be found guilty, or Harvey Weinstein, who was, he knows other people who are also doing exactly what he's doing, and those are the people with the knowledge. And everybody who's got something to lose will always find ways to hide their misgivings, right? So unless the people who are involved in these circles are actively playing a part in, like, outing other people, then you're always going to have the insert name here situation coming up. Absolutely agree, obviously, in terms of the individual support for people going into the industry, but it sounds like a horrible thing to say, but I just think these things are always going to go on because people have got so much to lose. They will do anything to cover their backs, and that means keeping secrets for other people who do the same sort of things.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So we're giving you guys some thoughts, some feelings, some hopeful ways that you may be able to at least get better, if not end. You've been watching that awesome podcast. Till next time, take care, you guys.